Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the most exciting podcast in my
Of all
lifetime.
time, it's your time you're wasting with
With?
put the names up, Martin, for the
Oh,
viewers at
God. All
home.
right, there you go.
With me, David Didow, and
Me,
the
Martin
ever
Robinson.
the ever attractive
Oh,
Martin Robb.
like a magnet.
It's hard to concentrate when he's on screen.
Certainly for me. I'm just,
Yeah,
overwhelmed by my own beauty, clearly.
yeah, yeah.
Ah, dear. What do they say about when you're. What's the saying about the child looks in the mirror and sees an old person staring back at them? Oh, what, who would have thought a child would become that or something? There's a quote. Anyway, doesn't matter. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Wow. That's a little competition for the listeners at home.
Yeah.
See if you can work out what Martin's on about. Leave a comment.
Perhaps an AI could actually do it for us,
Probably.
Yeah.
You should say that to AI and see if it can.
Come up with my garbled quote,
Yeah.
misquote. Can it actually come up with the original quote? Anyway, please like and subscribe. Please follow us or whatever it is on whatever podcast
Rate
platform
us
you listen
highly.
to us through. And what?
Rate us.
Rate us.
Star us.
Yes, rate us. Oh, no, only if it's a good rating. We don't want any
Oh,
low
yeah. No.
ratings.
Okay.
We
Well,
don't want to waste our time with that.
no, we don't really. We'd rather. If you don't like it, just don't listen to it.
That's it. That's it. So if you like it,
Don't get to the end and complain
no.
because it's literally your time you're wasting. We've
And it
warned
it is
you,
indeed. We do in the
and
title.
it's not going to get any better, is it?
Um, you never know.
You don't. You never know. Anyway, enough of this chaff. We're going to be talking about whether or not, as a society, we're getting stupider. Obviously, Martin and I feel like we're getting stupider as a result of knowing each other. But you may be familiar with the idea that intelligence scores were rising throughout the 20th century. And that was very interesting to psychometricians, people who looked at that. But now there's really good evidence that IQ scores are falling in developed countries. At the same time, latterly, AI is taking over more and more of our thinking and the sort of tasks that we might be engaging in. That having AI do those things for us might be making us stupider. And to use a phrase coined by Daisy Christodoulou, that we may be living in a stupidogenic society.
An
What do you make?
idiocracy. An idiocracy.
An idiocracy, yes, indeed. Idiocracy, apparently, the title of a banned film by Mike Judge of Beavis and Butthead fame.
Hmm. There
There
you
you
go.
go. I looked that up.
Did you ask AI?
I've never seen it. I'd never heard of it. It felt like idiocracy was a word that would have some sort of origin story. But apparently, or at least in my minimalist probing, that's as far as I got.
Yeah. Isn't it the AI? How long has AI been a big thing? I mean, it's basically Chat GPT, isn't it? As the
Wow,
first.
you've got it all over the place, haven't you? You've got the co-pilot and Grok, and I think there's
Yeah,
something
but the
called
first. I mean, the first thing, or when spell check started to come in, I suppose they're doing a bit of it.
and automated texting. You know, the
Yeah, that's it.
autocorrect.
But don't you find that irritating? Anyway,
Yeah, I find it
it's always got the
increasingly.
wrong word. It's
Yeah,
predicting. It's
I find now
predicting on.
it wants to predict the end of my sentence, and I think I don't want to say that, and then it's really hard to stop it doing
Yeah,
the thing that it wants to do, and then you have to go back and delete it.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, that's so irritating. But do we call things like so? This thing about IQ
Yeah,
going down a bit
yeah.
in Norway, particularly, I think, and isn't it other Scandinavian countries or
Well,
something? Or
yeah, we want to be careful here, Martin.
yeah,
We're not saying the Scandinavians are thickies so
no,
much.
but they actually do
They
IQ
collect
tests on their.
data. Yeah. So there was one big study done on Norway, done on the Norwegian population. So there is conscription, and people join the armed forces, and part of that requires people to take an IQ test. So there's a huge data set.
Isn't it
Which
also actually originally IQ tests were for um, conscription, or certainly for whether you can join the army in America or not, or something? And it was about
no,
if your score
not
was
originally.
below a certain level, you shouldn't become a member
Yeah.
of the armed
No, that
forces.
wasn't the original. The original use was in France. I forget the
Binet,
name. Yeah,
Binet,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Binet.
yeah. Who was looking at ways of creating sort of tailor-made special needs education, essentially.
Mm,
It was quite benign. And then it became much more eugenic-y in the States
mm.
in particular, where various people wanted to sterilize people with like scores below a
We're,
certain
we're
level.
certainly getting going
Well,
off the
I know, we're going way off. We're going way off. I
sterilize people. There you
I
go.
know, I know. I should point out we're not in favour of that. We don't like eugenics. We think it's a bad and a foolish thing. I have to make that clear because every now and again someone accuses me of being a
Oh
eugenicist,
no,
and I
no, you've
absolutely.
opened up the can of
I
worms.
know. So a few years ago, Martin, you might know this. I wrote a book called "Making Kids Cleverer," where I did a lot of research into intelligence, and I wrote a whole chapter about the history of intelligence, but it was basically everybody was racist, so I didn't include it in the book because it was
Yeah.
just too grim. So that could be a standalone essay for another time. The racism behind the history of IQ. Anyway, so James Flynn, who's I think he's a New Zealander.
Yeah.
James Flynn noticed in the 90s that IQ scores are they have to be renormed all of the time. So basically, 100 is always the average score. And he was looking at the fact that the norm had shifted to the right fairly substantially over the 20th century.
Which is not, by the way, listeners and watchers, that doesn't mean they've shifted to the right politically.
No, 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 sorry. In
It
terms
means
of the
the
bell curve,
curve.
yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and the basically IQ seemed to be going up 3 points every decade, and that really puzzled and confused and excited people. And there were various people who suggested that maybe our biology was changing, but obviously that's nonsense because evolution doesn't work anywhere near that quickly. So it had to be cultural. And so Flynn's argument was that the modern world that we live in, I can't. He used this nice term. I forget exactly what it is about. Sort of having something like cognitive spectacles through which we
Yes,
view
yes.
the world.
Do you know who wrote about this? I
No,
did in Athena versus the Machine.
right, okay.
The
What?
cognitive spectacles. There's
Yes,
a whole bit of a chapter on this, and the
right.
Flynn effect, and the
Yeah,
reverse Flynn effect as well. I
and reverse Flynn
must say.
effect. Yeah.
Can
So
we also say something here about fluid intelligence and
yeah, absolutely. So
Chris?
we believe the model of intelligence that we have is made up of two components, which are called crystallized and fluid intelligence. So crystallized intelligence is essentially the stuff that I forget which way
Right.
I've got it.
Can I say? Yeah.
No,
Can I
you get
add
in.
why
You get in.
this is ridiculous? Is because
They
they're
mean the
named the
exact
wrong way
opposite of what you
round.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fluid intelligence is the fixed one.
Yes,
Whereas
exactly. Yeah,
crystallized intelligence is the
yeah,
one
yeah.
that is changed by culture, etc. It's the wrong way
Exactly.
round. It's crazy, but
It is. It's very,
what
very
stupid
confusing.
person named them that way?
Who can? Well, I do know this, but I won't bore you. So anyway, fluid intelligence is pretty fixed, but it's called fluid because it increases as we age. So it reaches its peak in our early 20s, and then starts to decline. So, fluid intelligence is your raw reasoning ability. It's your ability to make sense of your environment without any prior knowledge. So, I don't know if you were Martin, if you can imagine this, if you were abducted by aliens and sort of abandoned on some alien landscape, how quickly would you learn how to survive? That would be a test of your fluid intelligence. Whereas crystallized intelligence is all the stuff you learn throughout your long life. And so while fluid intelligence peaks and then declines, crystallized intelligence just goes up and up and up and up. So there is some substance to the idea that as we get older, we get wiser.
And clearly, the
Is
thing
that
the thing is though, then we add obvious things like cognitive decline and other
yeah,
things like that
yeah.
also come in. But the
Well,
important thing is that you are affected by the culture around you. That's
right.
the society, the culture, the environment
Yeah.
in which you live in affects your IQ score anyway.
Yes. So what we can speculate, what we can be reasonably sure about, is that people's fluid intelligence ability or scores or whatever way you want to frame it is going to be reasonably constant over time and over history. Whereas our crystallized intelligence, the world in which we surround ourselves, is going to make a huge difference to our ability to get on in the world. So the idea that in our more distant past, our ability to think in abstract ways was limited because we didn't encounter abstract concepts necessarily. And then during the 20th century, that became more and more common. And so the kind of thing that's measured on an IQ test rewards the ability to think in abstracted ways. And this decline, the reverse Flynn effect, as it's often called, this decline is maybe associated with the fact that we don't have to engage our brains as much latterly as we perhaps did at the peak of the Flynn effect. So we're all painfully aware of the effects of large language models and Gen AI, but this has been going on, hasn't it, since the books and calculators and maps and all of those things which enable us to have an easier life.
Well, I mean, you get into obviously Socrates at some point, and we'll come back to him probably in a bit. But writing to him
Yeah,
was going to make us more stupid because we wouldn't have
yeah,
to remember things so deeply. And this, this is of interest
yeah,
as it's a direct example, perhaps, of where we are going with AI. Perhaps it isn't as bad as some people think, but anyway, writing is offloading thought, but also it's adding to thought because reading comes along as well at the same time. But maybe when we started writing things down and not remembering things, there was a decline in IQ, but we haven't got any data
no,
from that time because there was no such thing as IQ in Socrates' time. But I
no.
can't imagine that the Greek
Scandinavians didn't
philosophers were
have
stupid,
military
can you?
conscription then, so we just don't have any information. No. So Daisy Christodoulou on the No More Marking blog wrote a great article earlier this week, with the title of which I've completely forgotten. Hang on a second,
You can
I've got
look
it
it
up
up.
on my screen. It's called "Are We Living in a Stupidogenic Society?" So this idea that there's an idea that we live in an obesogenic society where everything that surrounds us encourages us to overeat and not to exercise because we don't have to, and cheap food, cheap calories are available very very readily in the West, in developed countries, and so therefore that encourages the obesity epidemic. And she's making the point that following James Marriott in an article that he wrote in the Times about where I think he called it moronogenic society, that we live in a culture where it's easy not to think.
Hmm.
And
Let's think about that for a bit. No, you can't have quiet on air.
no,
It's dead time. People hate it. I think, oh my god,
well,
something wrong with my
hopefully,
headphones.
hopefully they had a bit of a think.
They might have thought to themselves, what the hell's going on? Yeah, so are we? I mean, is there evidence that we're living in a
Well,
more stupid age? I mean, there is
we've
evidence
got
on the Flynn effect that it's going
yeah.
down. So mainly like we said, in Scandinavia. So we don't know whether this is the same for London or
Well,
parts
we
of
don't we
the
don't
West
collect
Country that
IQ
you
data.
live in, and
Yeah, we
or
don't
the whole
collect
of the
IQ.
UK. We don't
We don't.
know.
Yeah, we don't really collect the data. I mean, obviously, schools do CATs, cognitive ability tests, fairly routinely, and so there is a data set out there, but it's not widely shared. It's not
It's
really
not reliable
available.
either because it would be
Wow.
different. Isn't it mainly private schools who probably do cats? I'm
No, I
not
don't
sure.
think so. Lots of schools. The Multi Academy Trust that I work for used
Okay.
to get students to do cognitive ability tests on entry in
Okay.
year 7. So I think lots and lots of schools do that. So there is data out there, but I think it's generally considered to be a little bit dodgy to share children's data these days. I don't know.
Okay.
Um, yeah, there's probably a GDPR thing going on there. But the other, it's not so much evidence, but there's kind of reasoned speculation. So
Mm.
David Geary, who's well known for talking about biologically primary and secondary uh, knowledge, has also talked about cognitive environments. And so he makes the point that in the modern world, there's an evolutionary mismatch between what we evolved, the context in which we evolved, and the context in which we live. So modern school, digital life doesn't really align with the things that we find perhaps easy to do that we've struggled to do over our evolutionary history. So, like a good example of this is that we're brilliant at recognizing stuff. So, if you show someone, I don't know, something that looks like a bicycle, they're really good at instantly saying that's a bike, that's not a bike, and they don't have to think; it's just instant. Whereas there's a lovely study on this where participants are asked to draw bicycles, and in order that art skill and bicycle knowledge isn't conflated, they're given a pre-drawn bicycle frame and asked to add on the pedals and the chain. And around about 70% of people can't do that accurately, which so even though we're brilliant at recognizing what a bike looks like, we're not very good at recreating that knowledge. And the way in which we're assessed in school, if children were given a list of all the things that they were taught and just asked to tick off all the things they remembered, they'd be great. But we don't do that. We ask them to generate from, without prompts what they've
Mm.
been taught. And that's a lot harder and not something that we find it as easy to do. So
So what in terms of how stupid we're becoming?
yeah,
um, I, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'll ask you a question. I mean, if it's happening in the 90s or whatever, that we
yeah,
start reversing a bit, have we reversed back to the 1970s or have we gone back to the sort of medieval? I mean, how far
yeah.
back have we gone?
No,
How
so
stupid are we? Am I as
right,
stupid as my dad?
yeah.
That's the
Couldn't
question,
possibly
isn't it? I
come.
mean, am I as
Yeah,
stupid as
yeah. Okay,
Socrates
so
because
it
he
was
was
in the.
ancient?
So we have to remember that it wasn't really until the 90s that we noticed
Yeah.
the rise in IQ. So the reverse Flynn effect has only really been picked up since around about sort of 2015 or so. And the idea is that if it was rising at about 3 points a decade, the decline seems to be similar. So we haven't yet reverted in terms of our crystallized intelligence back to the dark old days of the 1970s. So there's a good chance that you might have more crystallized intelligence than people that lived in the past.
But the
But
crystallized intelligence is the thing that changes, don't forget.
yes,
So,
exactly.
because it does take time to get your head around that. So,
Yeah.
what about regression to the mean? Is
Go on. What about it?
Well, what about it? You tell me. I mean, is there a way that we sort of, well, yeah, now we're coming just back to
Yeah.
where we
Well,
should
this is
be?
this is basically correcting itself.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I think that would make sense when you look at sort of individuals, but when we're looking at big data sets, that would be we'd expect that to be ironed out in terms of the numbers that we're looking at. So we regress to the mean within the data set rather than over time.
very good. Anything else?
No, I'm going to leave it there because I'll very quickly run into hot water. Should we get in and talk a little bit more about offloading and the fact that the brain is a prediction engine?
Okay, well, let's talk about offloading in the first instance, but the idea that we know Yeah, use the calculator. So there I am
Yeah.
doing sums in the old days, and failing miserably at doing my
On a
multiplications
scientific
or whatever.
calculator.
And then the
Getting it by
calculator comes
Google
along.
upside
Yeah,
down.
they get this lovely machine in front of you, and all of a sudden you can do basic basic sums and everything. So obviously,
Martin, did
yeah,
you ever have a watch calculator?
no.
Oh, me either. I really wanted one.
Oh, I don't even wear a watch, mind you. So
Do you not?
anyway,
Okay.
that was
Oh,
a slight aside. Let's get.
I can imagine you having a pocket watch
I used to have a pocket.
on a chain, a
Yes,
fob.
it was my granddad's. Anyway,
Ah,
I don't know where it is. I might have it somewhere. He got it on
probably
his last day
fine.
working for Southern Railway as a porter, I think he
Really
was, and he was given that. Yeah.
wonderful.
Anyway,
Anyway,
so offloading something. So instead of doing the sums in your head, you're doing it on the calculator.
yeah,
Now, at some point, of course, calculators have really helped people make vast sums up. If you've got something really complex, it's a very useful tool to have. If you
yeah,
need to quicken things through, it's a very useful tool to have. The worry is that if you give it to kids when they're 3 years old and for the rest of their lives, they've never had to actually add anything up. They have completely cognitively offloaded, but never gained the skills of even understanding the underlying math. That's very American, math
yeah,
underneath something.
yeah.
So they don't understand how maths works. All they understand, it's a bit like driving a car. You might not understand how the car works, but it gets you from A to B, so
Yeah.
you're happy. Should we all be engineers? That's the
And
thing.
that's very similar to the opening of Daisy's article where she talks about her granny being a market trader and just being able to instantly top things up in her head with real accuracy. And Daisy speculates. There's a lovely picture. We'll put the link to her blog. There's a lovely picture of Daisy as a little girl in that, looking
Mm.
quite chopsy. Um, but
But the
you
interesting
know,
thing here, because her grandmother is doing very quick
yeah,
calculations on very, basic stuff about, go to an East End market, it's a pound a
yeah,
scoop of bananas, and all that. And you're buying things that way, and then quickly calculating it through, and then taking in cash. You remember cash, and giving out change and giving out the right change or the wrong change if she was crooked, which I'm sure she wasn't,
I'm sure she was.
and on all those things. Now the point is, these are quite mundane tasks, you could say, and therefore is she sort of not thinking about higher things? Could she actually be a nuclear physicist or something like that if she hadn't wasted her time with the small calculations of time?
Yeah, wow.
Her mind on higher things, perhaps. It's the same with darts. When you go and play darts
Yeah,
in a pub, you do it in your head, you quickly sort of work things through, but now you've got the sort of electronic boards as well, where people just put in their scores each time and it calculates for you. Is that?
oh, really? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah. Not
because
many,
that
but not proper pubs. Not proper
I
pubs.
don't know. I can't remember his name. That young lad who recently won the darts.
Luke Littler. Luke
There you
Littler.
go. There you go. And he was. I heard him being interviewed, and he was saying, and he's not relying on the electronic dart calculator. He can do all of these dart sums in his head. But he was talking about being really rubbish at maths at school.
Yeah, and it's and it is the sort of level of maths you're doing, because he's
Yeah,
doing taking things away and then we're also working out what his next throw should be for the throw after and things like
exactly. Yeah,
that. So it's calculation, but within a very small frame.
narrow range. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So is the cognitive offloading there damaging? Well, in that sense, what they're doing is cognitively focusing on a very narrow band of what you use your mind for in the day to day.
So,
What you could be using if you want to learn maths, you've got to do a lot more than work on a market stall and
So
play
you're
darts.
arguing, if I've got this right, you're arguing that moderate cognitive offloading it frees us up to
Yeah,
do more interesting things.
yeah,
So
it can
it's a
do. So if
really
you're,
good
yeah,
benefit.
I mean, if you move on, this is the whole point with curriculum. If you like, you get the basics but then you want to move on from that, but you don't want to lose the basic either. That's the other thing. So how useful is it to use again and again and again in slightly different ways, and then to build upon it in that
Yeah.
once, some people might say your times tables are very useful to know, but they're only useful to know if you therefore then go on to use them. If they
You
just,
use them. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a similar argument with phoneme grapheme correspondences, learning phonics, that you go through this process of learning them, and then most of us learn them to the point that we kind of forget that we know any of it.
hmm,
And if you gave someone who's a very skilled reader a test and said, can you name each of the 44 phonemes in English, they'd struggle,
but that's interesting, isn't it?
even though
Because
they can use them.
you don't need to know that. That's the thing. Once,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
which is
Unless
slightly
you're
different to a times table thing. You might need to know that nine nines of
yeah. But it's
what.
kind of interesting, isn't it, that we still go through this
What about
process of
that?
learning it. You talked a moment ago about learning to drive, and that's always a good example because we learn as adults, so we remember the process, and that part of learning to drive when changing gear was a huge procedure, and you'd have to think, what do I do with my foot? Where do I put my hand? Where am I looking? Oh my God, a pedestrian! All of that stuff becomes one fluid motion that becomes unthinking.
Okay, so what about, here you go. So
Mm.
we're changing society here
Yeah,
just for fun. We've got automatic cars and we've got the
yeah,
potential of
yeah.
driverless cars. I mean,
I know, I know.
it's the similar
Yeah,
sort of thing. You don't have to think about changing gear anyway. Once you're practiced at it, you don't tend to think about it unless, and this is very Heidegger, by the way, unless it goes wrong. All of a sudden, you've got the attention, it crunches, you've gone into reverse accidentally,
no.
etc., etc. So things like
Well,
that can happen. But if you go,
there's a
go on.
lovely experience that we all get. I think everyone gets this when driving at some point. Like you've passed your test and you're driving by yourself, and you have that kind of realization. Oh my goodness, I can't remember the last half an hour. Like, what on earth have I been doing? Have I killed somebody?
Hmm.
And you haven't, because
Well,
if
you
you
might have
had,
done.
if it had gone wrong, your focus would have snapped back
Yeah,
in, and you'd
yeah,
have been all
yeah.
over it. But our brains, our minds work in such a way that anything that we can automatize, we do, to allow us to do more interesting things like have a chat and send text messages.
It's also what I can't pronounce his name, Mikhail
Oh yeah, the flow diet.
Csikszentmihalyi, called
Yeah,
flow, the flow
yeah,
state, that you could actually become, you become totally absorbed by a task or whatever. That it's actually going through it flows through you. It flows through you. It's
and you
very easily.
become reabsorbed by
Yeah.
it.
Um, but yeah. So in terms of cognitive offloading,
Yeah.
if we offload something, so let's say I want to remember something and I
Hmm.
put it on my calendar.
Yeah.
That is cognitive offloading in that I've said, right, I'm not going to need to remember this.
Or you tie a knot in your hanky.
I could
Yeah,
tie a knot in my hanky. Oh, those were the days.
I know.
But, put something out there, or put it on, even more so on your phone
Yeah,
calendar, that it just
yeah,
pops up and reminds you that you're going to do it. So this is cognitive offloading. It's
yeah.
thinking less, but it's thinking less about mundane things. The
Mm.
thing about AI is that it's stretching what a mundane thing might be.
Right.
So we could perhaps get AI to write us our emails every day. Become our keeper of, become our secretary, if you like, or a
Yeah.
PA in ways. We could make it do things like that. Now, is that bad for us? Is that bad for
Mm.
our intelligence or not? Because these are
Well,
pretty mundane tasks.
it would appear to be, because there's been a suite of recent studies that look at knowledge workers, people who use AI fairly frequently in their day-to-day jobs, the environments that they're working in, and that they score less well on tasks of recall and understanding than people who don't use AI as much. There does seem to be an increasing amount of evidence, although it's speculative. It's not for sure, um, that heavy AI users score lower on tests of critical thinking. Now, that might be that people who are really good at critical thinking choose to use AI less. That's a reasonable hypothesis.
Correlation, not
Yeah,
causation,
yeah,
perhaps.
exactly. It's these are correlated scores. So, but there is an increasing body of evidence which is pointing in that direction. That the and there's been there was a much talked about study done at MIT which looked at neural imaging and that suggested that people that were whilst using ChatGPT there was less brain activity in areas that we associate with creativity. So the risk is that there's a feedback loop of, I love this phrase, cognitive miserliness. The more we offload, the less capable we get.
Yeah, can I say they're actually measuring creativity by how many uses you can make of a pair of trousers.
Yeah, let's quickly look at it. So, yeah, what I mean,
You could use them as the sailing boat. You could use them
you,
as, the sail on
you,
the boat.
you could use them if you've got dreadlocks. You could use them as a hat.
Oh dear. Oh dear. You could use them as a handkerchief. You could use them,
You can.
but
I
apparently,
remember when my children were little, my wife used to say, "Blow your nose on Daddy's trousers."
oh, lovely. Apparently, apparently,
Yeah.
AI, when asked to do this, most often comes up with you could use them as a pair of trousers.
What trousers?
Trousers, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's what
how
I use them.
that's how creative AI
Well,
is.
this is wow. So this is the Ken Robinson argument, wasn't it? The more one consequence of going through school, the less well that children score on that adaptive use test, with the paperclip test. And my argument
By the
would
way,
be
the reason David's just said paperclip is because it used to be about paperclips. That question
not
was asked,
trousers.
not about trousers. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so, little kids that don't really know much about the world sort of imagine, giant 60-foot paper clips that they could use to sort of climb trees or something. But my argument would be that the more educated and knowledgeable we become, the more we realize that many of these potential paperclip ideas are just stupid. So we don't report them. We just go, well, I can use
You
it.
see, this is the boringness of adulthood, and why you're not a
No, sort of
why you're
practicality
not
and the efficiency.
Salvador Dali
Well,
and his
I mean,
melting watches.
yeah, melting. Obviously, if we were, yeah,
Talking of pocket watches, we're back to that. What
yeah,
about
we
melting pocket
are.
watches?
Maybe that's what happened to yours. Salvador Dali melted it down and painted it.
But isn't there a sort of level of very tedious, uncreative, not particularly critical thinking jobs that, like accountants and
Well, creative accounting. We're not fans of that, are we?
lower level lawyers and things like
Yeah.
that are
Well, is
going to be
that
made
that's an
redundant by
interesting point, isn't
AI.
it? That creativity is often held up as something that's inherently good, but when we talk about creative accounting,
Yeah, I know you're
we're,
going to go on by this. Yeah, creativity is inherently good.
well,
You could
not
use
if
it for bad things, but it's a good in terms of how we've got on as a society, if you like. There's a sort of um, wig a wig like history of creativity. I suppose we could actually go fall back on and see that the highest form of comedy is Jim Davidson or something like that. No, that's not going to work, is it? It's not going
no,
to work. That's the
no,
trouble
it's
with
not.
wig history. But
Yeah.
especially if you read the jokes of Shakespeare, we've well, yeah, perhaps we have come on from that.
Yeah. Um, yes,
Sorry,
indeed.
that's
Yeah.
another tangent. But seriously, though, if we are replacing jobs with AI or replacing mundane
Elements of
tasks,
those.
we are
Yeah.
then leaving space for things that the machine can't do. Now, the big question
Wow.
is, can we ever get to that point if we don't ever do things that the machine can do?
Yeah. So the one of the difficulties is according to many metrics, AI can do things which you'd increasingly think of as creative. It can write poetry and it can produce artworks which people find very, very difficult to
It's
distinguish
it's
between
all
human
bollocks.
created. Pardon?
It's all bollocks.
Well,
No, the poetry, the
well.
art,
So
the
the
art,
point is,
the art.
that people, when shown a human created piece of work and an AI created piece of work, struggle to correctly identify which is which.
It depends how bad each of them is, though, isn't it? I
Well,
mean, I can look on social media and you can see straight away the sort of kitsch or derivative nonsense that people have done used their AI to bring up. There's a lot of it that is rubbish. And also, have you ever asked an AI to do a photographic, realistic image of a human being, and then realised that it can't do numbers of fingers? It
well,
always comes up with the wrong number of fingers. It can't draw
that's
hands. So
creative, isn't
even
it?
technically, even
That's creative.
that's creative as the Simpsons only have four fingers. So
There
perhaps
you
it's.
are. Maybe that's what's confusing it.
But
Disney.
the thing it lacks, and it will always lack, as far as I can see, is being part of a human body in a human
Right.
environment.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
can feel, it can see, it can
Yeah.
understand. None of that can be done by AI. And it can't. It replicates what the Turing effect wanted us to do, to make us
Yeah.
feel that we're discussing something with a human being, but we're not. We have. It's pretending. It's fooling us, but it isn't human. So it can never move creatively in the way that we can.
I mean, so the first part of that is correct. Whether that kind of physicality and feeling in the world is required for creativity is more open, I
I
think.
didn't say that. I said we're talking about a qualitative difference here. So the
But
poetry it comes
it's a
up with is always
it's a
derivative. It's
qualitative
always
difference.
derivative.
Well, it's true, fair. But I would say that all poetry is
No,
derivative.
no, there's a difference because, and this, it's obviously we are part of the. Here we go. People don't like this language. I'm going to use it. The community of minds. We're part of the
Yeah,
community of minds of
and the
the
conversation of
great
mankind.
conversation of humankind, and all that. We're all part of that. But then we bring our own perspective, our own feelings, and our own emotions, and we try and yeah. Don't you smile at me like that, young man. And we bring all those things in, and we use that to with language, with the language that we have been, in Shakespeare's terms, making up my own words as well, in order to communicate the human condition and to talk about the human condition.
Yeah,
You ain't going to
yeah.
get an AI that can do that.
Well, but
Honestly, you can get an AI to pretend it can do that.
okay. So the honestly is the important bit there, and I think that I'd go back to the idea that if we can't tell the difference, does it matter?
No, but I'm telling you, you're describing something about telling the difference.
Mm,
And let's say there is a. All right, let's make this difficult. Let's put it on computer.
yeah,
So we've got a computer game, and we've got
yeah.
two gamers playing, I don't know, FIFA a football game. They're playing a
Okay.
football game on their computer, and we've got an audience. And these things do get audiences.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
they do.
and you've got Fred playing
Esport, isn't it?
Jane or whatever, and they're on there and they're playing the game, and people are finding it interesting.
Yeah,
Now, if we just take Fred and Jane away and just have the machine playing the machine, it's going to lack a certain amount of interest if people know that. Now,
yeah.
if they don't know that,
Mm.
then will they
No,
be
it's a good
taken
point.
in the same way?
Good point.
Because that's at a certain level. Now, if you look at a shit artwork by a human being and shit artwork by a computer, are you going to be able to tell the difference? Probably not. But qualitatively, something good can come from the human side that will never
Okay.
be equaled. Here we
Yeah, no,
go.
it's a
Never,
really
ever,
interesting.
ever be equaled by the machine.
Well, discuss. We'll put up a link to a pair of articles, one by Scott Alexander on Astral Codex 10, where he talks about winning the bet that AI can produce art that you
Yeah,
can't
yeah, yeah,
distinguish from human art. And then a response by Gary Marcus,
yeah.
who's an AI skeptic. And I think they're a really interesting pair of articles, which I'd encourage you to go away and read. But let's Martin, let's bring this back to our bread and butter. Schools. What
Yeah,
should schools do in an environment which is becoming increasingly lacking in cognitive nutrition?
I think what would be really interesting is a survey of
Mm.
kids who are
Go
being honest. So obviously they have to be completely and utterly trusting in the questioner, and asking them, have they ever used AI to cheat their
to
schoolwork, to
cheat.
cheat their teacher?
Ah,
And that's the important thing. It's not using it in the way that the teacher knows, it's cheating the teacher in order to get a good mark, or something like that. And
yeah,
that would be an interesting place to start. And then if we think there is a big use of it, and my bet is that there's quite a lot of
yeah,
usage, more than we
yeah.
would perhaps expect, I don't know, perhaps younger than we would expect, I don't know,
Mhm.
then are we worried that actually further down the line, so much is missed in the foundational learning that further down the line, when they have to write an essay in a pen and paper test or something, they can't because they've never written an essay,
Mm.
despite those hundreds of essays they've handed to you over the years, or can't do the thinking involved in what underpins that essay.
So we know we've got self-reported data from students in higher education that a overwhelming majority do use AI to complete assignments, and obviously they don't declare that. So to that extent, they are cheating the teacher. We also know we've also got some data from people who work in higher education admitting anonymously that they use AI to assess these AI produced pieces of work. So there's a whole interesting circularity there. Um, but I think one of the things that we'd have to consider is that if we set tasks that that have stakes, which can be completed or certainly improved by the use of AI, if marks can go up if you use it, why wouldn't you use it?
Mm.
The problem is in the setting of the task. Now, with working with younger children in schools, if we're giving them homework, like the old FOFO homework, where we just say go away and find out about a thing and come back and give a written report on that thing, then it's our own stupid fault that they'd go and use AI to do that.
Yeah, and it's not that big a change from what was happening before, when it was just cut and pasting
Copying
from Wikipedia, or
exactly.
and a few other places.
It's
So
harder
it's,
to spot.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
something to do with the task you're setting. And
Yes,
but
exactly.
even in the old days, you just look up a book and then write it down. It'd just take a bit more,
Yeah.
but it was very mundane. But you could
Well,
do
it
that.
took some effort at least to find the book. Do you remember those Saturday morning TV shows where they'd have general knowledge question or question? They'd ask a question, and you had to find out the answer, and then you could win a prize. And obviously, these days that doesn't work at all because you just look it up on your phone.
I was
But I
watching
remember,
Banana Splits actually,
I
and
remember at
Tiz
least
was.
once or twice, like really wanting to take part in the whatever it was on Swap Shop or Tiz was or whatever, and going to the library and trying to research the answer to the question posed on the show so that I could. I never did.
That
Wouldn't
wasn't
know.
Tiz was.
No,
That
it
was all
wasn't. It was
custard pies in the face and things
probably
like that.
Swap Shop,
I think
but
so. Yeah, bit more BBC. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I wasn't really allowed to watch ITV as a kid.
Oh, that's what they say.
I know. I mean, I'd sneak a bit of Tiz was on. I can still do the die and fly.
Yes. But
And remember
okay,
fond memories of the Phantom Flanflinger
Fanfinger, yes, and Lenny Henry as well doing his
and Sally James's Zip.
yes. Let's move. Good
Let's
grief.
move
I
on.
don't
Move
know
on. Yeah.
where you're going with that. I've got
No,
absolutely
I
no
don't
idea.
know either. I don't know. I
But
think you do know, Martin, and that's what worries me.
if you're listening to this, just look at my face now. You can
Yeah,
imagine what it looks like. I know if you're listening to it, you can't see my face, which is the whole problem.
but just imagine Martin's face, and it's a disapproving face, isn't it, Martin?
Disapproving. That's it.
Yeah,
So yeah. So if we're in a school that
yeah,
we're using AI, how to use it in a way that's open, that's understood, or should we just ban it completely? Certainly
yeah.
in the classroom, perhaps, but then should we set things that can be done at home? I mean, it's already to
Yeah,
some extent obvious that when someone does an essay at home, middle class kids tend to do better
get
because
their
they can
mum
ask
to
their
help them.
dad,
Yeah,
their
yeah,
mum, or
yeah,
whatever for a bit of help. And kids who live in noisy rooms and small flats or whatever, with lots of brothers and
yeah,
sisters
of course.
running in and out, tend to do worse. So there's already a class difference that goes on
Yeah,
in these types of homeworks.
and
Should you
so
be
that.
setting that type of homework with
Well, yeah,
AI?
should you be setting that type of homework, and should you be attaching that kind of stake to it where it's worth cheating? Because you ask the question, are we, do children cheat the teacher? But what maybe we should be encouraging them to think about is whether they're cheating themselves, and if completing a task effortlessly without having to think about it means effectively that you don't get better, then what's the point?
Yeah, but I used to do. I remember in first year,
Yeah,
year seven to
yeah,
people nowadays, we were introduced to the joys of cross country running, and
yeah.
I must say
Happy
that it
days.
was very unjoyful for a kid of tender age,
Yeah,
and the number of kids who would cheat, take shortcuts and things like that,
yeah.
and the
I used to
teachers
hide in
didn't
the
care.
bushes and have a fag. That was my
Yeah.
approach to cross
So
country.
so we can talk about these things,
Not in year seven, probably.
but cheating yourself doesn't seem to matter much if you don't give
Exactly,
a
exactly.
fig about it.
A flying fig. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't care, then it makes sense to cheat. Absolutely right. So, how do we provide in schools an environment where it makes sense, where it's valuable to make an effort? That's obviously, if we solve that problem on today's episode, Martin, we will have done very, very well. Um, one of the things, going back to Daisy's article, which sort of sparked this conversation, is that she makes a point about that if we think about the way, if we go back to that idea that we're living in an obesogenic culture where people go to the gym for fun, they elect to go to the gym. Well, not necessarily fun, but they choose to do it to get a particular benefit because the society around us doesn't naturally provide the outlets needed to stay fit and healthy, and that maybe she makes the point that in a future where thinking isn't required, where reading isn't required, where AI does many of these basic things for us, that cognitive activity will become in elitist. It will become something that a small number of people choose to do either for fun or for competition. So we might have the equivalence of cognitive marathon running, where people are entering and taking part for the joy and the pleasure and the achievement of taking part. And in a future that where the cognitive environment becomes more like our current physical environment, maybe the role of schools is to become gymnasia for the body and mind.
Yeah. It's it's interesting that the number of quiz programs on telly and the pub
Yeah,
quiz and things like that. The pub quiz, of course, got into trouble when the mobile phone came along, the smartphone came along,
yes.
um, and
Do we
people
not have
cheat.
pub quizzes anymore?
They do, yeah, loads of pub quizzes around, and
But people
people
just
people look down on people who cheat. But
yeah,
why are they going to the toilet three times every time the
yeah.
question about sport comes up and something like that? So I'm sure there's a sort of element of doubt that has crept into it. But gymnasia, yeah, you talk about the whole body and mind there,
Mm.
and the importance of enriching those things. Are we, though, trapped in the measurable, the instantly measurable in terms of the GCSE, the A
Mm.
level, the SAT scores, and things like that? That actually, no matter what we romantically want our schools to be, we're stuck within this straitjacket of measurement.
Well, obviously, calling it a straitjacket is inherently pejorative, and
Absolutely.
and
That's
and that
you saw what
maybe
I was doing there.
I did see. I sniffed you out, Martin, and that maybe not everyone might consider it such. So the potential advantage to that straitjacket is it does provide scope for a training environment in which young people are doing the equivalent of cognitive push-ups and squats, and so the reading of books and the mastering of times
Yeah, look,
tables.
I'm sure that I could pass. No,
Yeah,
well, let's not you have me. Let's say a student could pass. Let's say English literature,
yeah,
GCSE, with just looking through online or doing a bit of AI stuff, but getting answers to questions
yeah,
around what book, Christmas Carol, something
yeah,
like that, of Mice
yeah.
and Men, or whatever it is, nice short
No
books.
doubt.
Was it Scott's Notes or whatever? Those
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. All of it. York
York
notes.
Notes, things like that. I could just
Yeah,
buy
yeah,
those, just read through there, or the online equivalents,
yeah.
and never bother reading the book. I could still
Yeah,
pass the GCSE.
of course you can. And so, yeah, that's probably true. Yes, but that would be then a criticism of that particular test rather than
Well, it's a
a
criticism of
concept.
GCSE.
Pardon me?
It's criticism of exams. It's a criticism of GCSEs. If we know we have a system that is, fundamentally about snippets of information. In the end,
Gobbets.
not saying the process of getting there should be, but then
Hmm.
in the end, you can actually get away with teaching small bits focused very much on the exam in order to get good exam results. And no way have you approached the gymnasia.
Right. Right. So, what's the solution then, Martin?
Oh, yeah, you shouldn't ask me that question. You want me
Hmm.
to solve the
Should
whole
we
problem.
should we focus then in schools on the things that machines can't do?
It's interesting as well, actually, talking about gymnasia, that you go to a gymnasium and there are lots of machines there doing specific
Wow.
things to help you. So,
Yeah.
they're
Not if you're doing free weights, Martin.
no, hey, yeah, but
Like a real man.
you're under your own risk when you do that, aren't you? But
Yeah.
and all this sort of stuff, and you're allowed to adjust a few weights and things like that. But
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things are specifically designed to make your body better. So, can we specifically design education and educational tasks in a way to make your brain better,
Yeah.
rather than just something at the end, which is to pass this particular? I know this at this precise minute in my life, and then
Well,
want to continue doing it once you've let go of your.
I don't know. I mean, I think we have to accept that certainly as people become adults, if they don't want to continue using their mind in particular ways, and if they don't want to use their bodies in particular ways, that ultimately that's a decision that they're making. I'd like it to be the case that education allows them to make that choice in a more informed way. So I think one of the things about the gym analogy that I like is that we all accept if I go to the gym and I get fit and that doesn't last. If I stop going to the gym and just sit on the sofa and eat burgers for the next few years, I'll stop being fit. And I think that what's less well understood is that there's a naive idea that if I go to school and I pass my GCSEs, I'll become cleverer. I'll learn all of this stuff, which will become having a permanent impact on my life. And that's, I think, naive because if you're not in a cognitively enriching environment, if you're consuming the junk food of social media and AI, then you should expect to become less cognitively fit.
Right.
Fit.
I'm interested there. What you say, cognitively enriching environment. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lovely history book that I got somewhere, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's about how certain cities have been the the centres of cognitive enrichment, if you like. That obviously Athens at a certain time, then
Yeah.
Paris,
Or Vienna.
London, all these cities, and Liverpool in the early '60s and things like that. That actually, if you were in that environment, you had more of a chance because the
Mm.
environment around you was lifting up, not just the famous ones, but Cilla Black as well. Not just talented ones. Cilla Black got up there as well. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
But so there's a way that schools could perhaps take that on board. That this is a cognitively
Yeah.
and physically enriching environment for all.
Yeah.
And the way that my council run gym up the
Yeah.
road is. It's got the gym, the swimming pool, and the library all together, and a health cafe.
Oh, I love that. That's great. Okay, maybe we should have more multi-purpose gyms that are focusing on the body and mind.
Hmm.
What a great idea. And that maybe that's something that schools try and lean into a little bit more, that we're helping people get fit, we're helping people, young people, to be able to do things which give them an opportunity, so that the more cognitively enriched you are by your education, the more likely you are to be able to access a cognitively enriching set of choices after school.
And also the way that it can act as a community hub. It doesn't have to just be for
Mm.
young people. It can be, what about night schools that used to take part in place in schools,
Yeah.
and other things like that, that they become hubs for engagement with the whole community, not just it's just for kids. There's going to be safeguarding, blah blah blah, but at some point, certainly in rural areas, I mean, the school is quite an important hub of the local community, perhaps, or should used to be. I don't know if it still is. Now, also you've got PFI and all this, so you might not even own the school that you're.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
Maybe. So I don't know. What we're groping after here, perhaps, is that maybe the most radical things can do in the age of artificial intelligence is to try and insist on and channel real intelligence, like what it is to use your body and mind together in a satisfying way. I think there's an inherent risk here that thinking in this way makes the whole process of education seem more elitist. Though I don't know what you think about that.
well, it goes back to the Greeks, that everyone, the education
For
is
leisure.
for your leisure. It's for leisure
Mm.
time, and we got to the point that a lot of what we think education is for work,
Yeah, yeah.
and perhaps we need to rebalance that.
Yeah, that's really true. So if AI can do so much of the work stuff,
Mm.
we don't need education for work, but we do need it to be more interesting and alert people.
There you go.
There you go. Borrowed thought, very tempting. If we want to accomplish tasks quickly and easily, why wouldn't we offload? But it does come at a cost. And we need to think about, do we want to be thinkers or do we want to be consumers and users? What do we want for our children?
And we'd love to hear your comments.
Yeah,
So
please get in touch and
please,
tell us what we've missed, what we've got wrong. Criticize and complain to your heart's content. We just very, very quickly last week, we talked about attention and that sort of thing, and somebody got in touch on Twitter and said, "Oh, I could only be bothered watching halfway through," and both of us felt like, and then we could have got the joke. So well done. I forget who that was, but good joke. I hope it was a joke.
well, this is it. Now you're going to doubt.
No, I don't even know. But yeah, but thanks once again for wasting your time with us. We will look forward to seeing you
Next
in the
time.
future. Next time.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Adieu.